G'day, I'm Tommy from Bushman Fridges, and today I'm going to show you how to move the hinges from the right hand side to the left hand side of your Bushman DCL series fridge. It's really important to get this done correctly from the start so that your fridge runs as efficiently as possible and to prevent ice build up in the fridge or the freezer section. For this video you'll need 3 tools, either a power drill or a Phillips head screwdriver, a very small flathead screwdriver and a heat gun. The first thing we're going to do is remove the plastic cap on top of the door hinge, and to do this you'll need a really small flat screwdriver. So the screwdriver sits in underneath this cap in line with the screws on the side, and you just give it a little click and it will come off like that. To make this job a lot easier, the first thing we do is we tilt the fridge back. So you just lean it back about 20 or 30 degrees, not too steep, just enough so you can get access to the hinges on the bottom. For this step you'll need a Phillips head screwdriver. You can either use a hand tool or a power tool. We're taking the top 3 screws out. Once you've done that, the top hinge just lifts off and then you can remove the freezer door. There is a washer on the top of the middle hinge, little black washer here. You just want to make sure that you keep that in place. Next step is to remove the middle hinge. There's just 2 Phillips head screws in the front that hold the middle hinge in place. So we buzz those 2 out. That middle hinge will then lift off, and there may also be a little black washer sitting in on the top of the fridge door. Just make sure you keep a hold of that so you can put it back in place afterwards. So next up we simply lift off the fridge door. This little guy can be a little bit heavy. And again, there's probably a little black washer on top of that lower hinge. Make sure you keep a hold of that so you can put it on again later. Next step is to remove the lower hinge. Again, there's 2 Phillips head screws. So we just buzz those out. Once you've got the bottom hinge off, you need to swap the pin from the right hand side to the left hand side. We usually put this in a vise and then use a set of multi-grips because it's screwed in pretty tight. Once you get it swapped over, that is what it's going to look like. Now I've got the bottom hinge off. On the left hand side there's these little black plastic covers that are hiding the screws on this side. So you just pop those little covers open like that and then we'll unscrew those. And again, I'm going to use a power drill to unscrew those. And then we'll pop these back into the right-hand side. We grab the lower hinge that we'd moved the pin and we put that in on the left-hand side. To start with, we'll just do this up sort of finger tight, maybe hand tight, enough so that it stays in place and we can manipulate the door once we get it on. We also need to remove these 2 middle screws from the left hand side. That's where we're going to fit the middle hinge. Grab your fridge door. There's a little black plastic cap here on the left hand side. You need to pop that out and just drop him in on the opposite side. Next thing we're going to do is put the fridge door on the lower hinge pin. Before you do that, you'll want to put your little black plastic washer on there. Gently sit the fridge door onto that pin. Just sort of sit it into spot. Middle hinge, little black plastic washer goes underneath. Middle hinge sits into place and then we screw it in. Once you've got the fridge door in position, make sure that the bolts in your top and bottom hinge are done up kind of finger tight so that if you need to, you've got a little bit of play in the hinges. I generally stand the fridge up for this step because it's a little bit easier. What you want to do is have a look at the side of your fridge door and the side of your fridge, and you want to have a nice straight line on both sides. You can move your hinges from side to side and a little bit up and down till you get your door perfectly straight. This is really important because when you're opening and closing your door later on, it needs to be aligned with the fridge cabinet so that it doesn't rub. Once you've got your fridge door in a nice even position, you can then tighten up the bottom hinges and the top hinges. Again, for this I'm going to use a power drill. If you're not comfortable with a power drill, you can always use a hand screwdriver. Before we can put the freezer door on, we need to remove these two little plastic blanks, and underneath those two screws, we'll take those out and then we'll be able to put the top hinge on. So remove that little black plastic cover over to the right hand side and screw it back down into place. Next up, the freezer door goes on. Remember to put the little black plastic washer on the middle hinge pin. Sit your freezer door on. Just wiggle him down into place. There'll be another little black cover on here which we pop off. We move him to the other side. Then we put the top hinge on. Again, we'll do these 3 Phillips head screws just up finger tight, so we've got a little bit of play in the hinge. Once we have the freezer door in position, we need to check the alignment of the freezer door as well. The way we do that is by checking the gap in between the top of the fridge door and the bottom of the freezer door, and just making sure that's the same on both sides. At this point, you can manipulate the freezer door because those top hinges are still finger tight, so you can lift it up or down to get it into position. Once you've got that nice and square, just tighten up the top hinges. Once I've got the freezer door on, the last thing I do is a final check, just to make sure that the fridge door opens and closes freely without any resistance. And that's perfect. And the same with the freezer door, just making sure it opens and closes without resistance. If you find you need to give it a shove in the last couple of inches, it's possible that the bottom of the fridge door or the bottom of the freezer door is rubbing on the fridge cabinet here when it closes. So then you would need to potentially add another washer underneath either the middle hinge or the bottom hinge to lift one of those doors up. Once you're happy with the final alignment of the freezer door and the fridge door, make sure you tighten up the top hinge, the middle hinge and the bottom hinge, and then you can put the plastic cover back on the top. Once you've got your fridge doors on and buttoned up, the last thing we need to do is reset the rubber door seals. For this, you'll need a heat gun. This is really one of the most important steps of the whole process, because the seals will often have a small gap. It can either be a thin slither or it can be quite a large gap. So I'll show you now how we go about resetting the door seals with a heat gun. One way to check the rubber door seals is using a torch. So I'd put the torch inside the freezer, just sort of shine it forwards. With the door closed, just have a visual look all the way around. Sometimes you can see just here, for example, I can see a tiny slither of light coming through the corner. It's only about 1 millimetre wide, but that's enough for moisture and air to get into the freezer. And you'll find if we leave it like that, the freezer is going to get really icy really quick. So we'll have to heat that little bit up with a heat gun. I'll show you how to do that now. First thing you do is you just pick a side. So I'm going to start on the freezer door about halfway down. You want to have your heat gun on about medium heat, and then you just gently work up and down over about a 20 centimetre length of the seal until it warms up. As it warms, you'll see it move and it'll suck onto the fridge cabinet because there's a magnetic strip which runs the whole way through that rubber seal. And then you just gently work your way down the door to the corner, and then you can open the fridge door to get underneath the bottom of the freezer, up the other side and across the top of the freezer door. Once you've done that, you leave the door closed for about 10 minutes so the seal can cool in that position. So I've gently warmed that section of rubber up with this heat gun, and you can see in the video that the little slither of gap there closed. It took 10 or 20 seconds to close, but I was just very gentle with applying the heat, making sure to keep the heat gun at least sort of 20 centimetres away on a medium setting. If I'd gone too close or too hard with the heat gun, I would have run the risk of melting that rubber seal. I would also go around the whole freezer door and do the same thing. Even if I can't see a slither of light coming out, I would just go along and gently heat the rubber door seal up the whole way around the freezer door. Leave the door closed for about 10 minutes to cool in that position, and that way I know I've got a perfect seal. Once I've done the freezer door, I would then do the same process with the fridge door. In order to access the fridge door, if you open the freezer door, I can get access to the top of the fridge door. And to get to the bottom of the fridge door, I just tilt the fridge back so I can get the bottom side. I hope you found that video helpful. If you have any queries, please get in touch with us anytime. We are always happy to help.